What are the causes and effects of the new slavery in America? We see it on the TV news, a blind search for justice. Anger and frustration explodes on the streets. Black on black violence all over Chicago, all over the country at an all-time high. When life has no purpose, there is no respect for others, and no respect for life, no respect for family, or for the families of their victims. They feel like lesser beings, because that is how the government sees them. Future deadbeats. Let me explain. I am Alan Cohen, director of freefamily.org, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to getting the government out of our families, and author of America Solved, a New Family for the 21st Century. Our Constitution is supposed to protect our citizens, but history says otherwise, especially in times of war. Lincoln freed the slaves, true, but he suspended the right of habeas corpus, allowing the government to jail citizens without charges. World War I saw jailing of the so-called radicals who opposed the war. World War II saw the internment of Japanese citizens because they were of Japanese descent, while Germans and Italians walk free. And in times of war, our government dehumanizes our enemies to justify their destruction. The 1960s and 1970s saw a surge in welfare costs, causing a budget crisis. Congress decided to ignore its own data and go after the easy target, the poor black men who had just recently gained equal rights. Poor men who Congress had all but evicted from their families were now the enemy. And in this war on poverty, the government began to dehumanize them. First, the government blamed the evicted for their own eviction. Then, in this new propaganda campaign, the government gave them a nickname to justify treating them like scum. Feminists jumped on the bandwagon with their own spin. These men were not fathers. They were sex criminals facing the wrath of an unstoppable force. And just like the Japanese, constitutional rights were an inconvenience. Jail them for being too poor. Deny them the right to consul when they cannot even afford to pay their government-imposed obligation. Charge them with felonies where there is no dream team to defend them. Only an overworked public defender, left with the impossible burden of proving a negative. Impossible to overcome the assumption that the deadbeat purposely failed to pay. The only defense, maybe being in a coma. There is no excuse. There never is an excuse not to pay, according to this law. Being in prison, losing a job, and without means to challenge an illegal child support order, there's nothing to do but plead them guilty and put them into a revolving cycle of probation violations because the plea itself restrained their ability to earn an income. These men were now slaves to the government. Poverty was now a crime that cost less than their confinement. All this to hide from U.S. citizens the real perpetrator and cause of the crisis. But it gets worse. The government openly defrauds these men into accepting responsibility. That's next time on The New Slavery. For freefamily.org, I'm Alan Cohen. Thank you for listening.